Broke, unemployed, and a single mum to 2 kids. That's how I found myself in my early 30s. My life was completely falling apart. So in this video, I'm going to discuss how I kind of managed to pick myself back up again. So my name is Dr. Sammy, and I'm new to YouTube. So if you like this sort of content, please like and subscribe and share with anyone who you think might benefit from this video. So some background information. I got divorced in late 2020, and a few months prior I'd moved to Cairo for my kids' school, and I wasn't working then. So I was working ever since I was 16. I was working up until that point, and then I took the decision to move to Cairo because the schools in Cairo were just better for my children. So I wasn't working for a few months, and then I got divorced. So there was a very tough time in my life. I was broke. Before I'd even got divorced, I'd gone through all my savings. I was never good with money. The biggest regret I have is not learning how to manage my finances properly, because I wouldn't have been so desperate in my early 30s. So the way I was working full-time as an embryologist in Mansoura, and the way the wages worked was you get paid per cycle. So if there were 10 cycles, you get paid a certain amount. If there were 30 cycles, you get paid another amount. So 2020 lockdown, the center closed for like pretty much most of 2020. I wasn't making any money, and because my marriage was falling apart, the way I dealt with it was through online shopping addiction. I've never really talked about this to anyone because it's such an embarrassing way to handle stress, but at the time during lockdown, all I did was online shop, especially Alo Yoga. I think Alo Yoga took most of my money. Anytime you'll see me wearing an Alo Yoga set, is because I bought so much Alo Yoga in 2020. If you want a video about how I managed to get myself out of online shopping addiction, let me know, because that's a whole other topic. But I'd burned through all my savings before moving to Cairo, and I found myself broke and unemployed and really struggling financially. I think the financial struggle was the biggest shock to me, because prior to that time in my life, because I've always had a job and I've never really struggled financially, I've never encountered money troubles. And it is tough. I would spend hours awake at night. I'm like, oh my God, I have all of this to pay. I had so much to pay on my credit card, and I didn't know how I'd get it. And then I started selling stuff I had. So I started selling bags, jewelry I didn't like, everything. And I was like, this is not sustainable. Pretty soon I'm going to run out of things to sell. So it was really tough, because before I got divorced, I didn't have to pay for rent. I didn't have to pay for utilities. I didn't have to pay for food. I didn't have to pay for anything. So all the money I was making was just going straight to me, and I didn't save or spend any of it wisely. And now I had less money than I was ever making before. And then I had to pay bills, childcare, food, school activities, clothes, all of that stuff. It was just a lot. And it was such a shock to me, because I was like, oh my God, living is expensive. I never really had to properly adult up until then. But yeah, it was really a shock to the system. I always knew I could depend on my parents if I was becoming really desperate, but I didn't really feel comfortable asking them for money, because I just felt I've always been making my own money since I was 16. I've always had a job. I just didn't want to ask my family for handouts. And then I didn't want to become like that relative who can't provide for herself and everyone, just like a burden to everyone. It wasn't something I was happy to do. So I was like, I'll try to figure things out my own way before I come to that. And also because I was brought up and academia was super important to my parents. So I was always studying when I was a teen. I had to get into medicine. I was studying just to pass, because if you didn't study, you'd fail. I worked really hard to become an embryologist. I did so much, so much work. And then at the end, I was like, I don't want to be that type of person who spent all of her life studying and trying to work hard, and at the end I can't even provide for myself. Like that for me was like causing me a lot of oh my God, what the hell, what was the point of life? I was really thrown in an existential crisis because of that. So I didn't really want to have all the hard work I'd built in the previous 15 years to go to waste. So I was like, no, I'll figure it out. So I worked as a teacher for one term. I didn't last more than a term. And can I just say, teaching is the hardest work I've ever had to do in my entire life. You could not give me $1 million for me to get back into teaching. It is so hard. I think teachers need to make at least 20 times more than they're making, because it is one of the hardest jobs ever. I'd rather do anything than teach again. It was such a difficult job. At the time, I think that's when I founded Sincero. It was around 2020, and I started making hair oil products and starting selling them. And to be fair, like, it did cover the costs for a while, because I was selling a good amount and I was getting repeat customers. So I kind of had a steady income, but it was like not enough to, like, you know, provide for me and 2 children. I ran into a lot of issues with production, but I learned an awful lot as well. Like, for example, there was one time I wanted to make boxes for my hair oil, and at the time I went to some production company and they're like, oh, the minimum amount is like 500 boxes, and I only had like 100 bottles, and I was like, okay, fair enough, I'll do it. And then they produced 500 boxes for me, and I didn't ask for a prototype before. When I put the hair oil bottles in the boxes, because they were so flimsy, it just come true. I think I have a video of it somewhere. I'll post it here. I am not 100% happy with the quality of this box. يعني بجد, it's the design. I worked so hard on the design. It took me ages to do, and in the end I just feel the quality of the box is a little bit flimsy. مش عاجباني خالص. like أنا بجد حاسة إن أنا هعيط عشان بقالي شهور بشتغل في الموضوع ده. And now I actually still have these boxes now. I just have like a big box full of useless boxes because I didn't do the proper research before. I did learn a lot, though. With the Sincero productions, I learned a lot about producing, kind of marketing, a lot about website design and all that jazz. And it was a very fun experience. It was not enough to cover the bills. So mentally, I wasn't doing well at all. And this is just my own personal experience. I don't know what other people, especially in Egypt's experiences were when they got divorced. But for me, I felt like, how can I say this? I just felt like people avoided me. So because I'd moved to Egypt during university, I never really had my own set of friends. I just kind of came and I met my husband at uni, and his friends just kind of by extension became my friends. So after we got divorced, none of the friends that I'd made actually kept in touch with me. I think it's because they felt they were his friends first, so it was easier for them to just stay friends with him than to be friends with both of us. And if I'm being completely honest, I have discussed this in another video, I didn't really vibe with the friends in the first place, so it wasn't really a big loss to me because I never made real connections with any of them. But it was kind of surprising that nobody reached out to me and like nobody talked to me. I just felt totally alone. And I do feel there is a bit of a stigma around divorced women, especially in Egypt. A lot of people just don't want to be associated with you. Again, this is my own personal experience. It might just be me. Maybe people didn't want to associate with me for whatever reason. But I just felt like a lot of people changed around me. And every time I'd meet someone by coincidence in a supermarket or in a cafe, blah, the way they talked to me was just so weird. They'd just be like, oh my God, how are you? Are you okay? As if like, you know, I was dying or lost a limb. And I'm like, I'm okay. How are you? And they just treated me as if I was like, I don't know, they just treated me weird. And it just made me uncomfortable. I was like, I'm not going to be around people who make me feel uncomfortable. And also, being divorced, you get into all these weird situations that I never thought were possible. So, for example, when I rented the apartment that me and the girls were in, my ex-husband, he's the one who did the contract. He was actually paying for the rent at the time. So he's the one who wrote the contract, met up with the landlord, blah. I don't think he'd mentioned that we were separated or whatever. So we had like a contract. And then when the landlord found out that we were divorced, he like called me up and he was like really rude to me. He was like, I want to double the rent. and I want you to like sign a contract that this is a 1-year contract, and if you decide to leave, you have to pay the whole year anyway. And I was like, okay, a bit unfair, but I was desperate because I really needed the apartment at the time. So I was like, yeah, fair enough, I'll do it. And then he was still upset, and he managed to get my brother's phone number, and he was like, basically, I want her out this week. He just didn't want a divorced woman in the apartment because he probably thought I couldn't pay or whatever. And I actually was working at that time, and I was out of the country. My poor mom had to come get the moving men in and take all my stuff and put it into storage until I came back, because the landlord just didn't think a divorced woman was worthy of him renting the apartment to. I had a lot of other incidents happen as well. They weren't as dramatic as that, but like, for example, that apartment that I was in, I had a mountain bike because I just come out of COVID and I was cycling a lot during lockdown. So I had a bike, and one of the webs was like, oh, I really want this bike. Will you sell it? Will you give it to me? I was like, no, I want my bike. And then when I left the country for a while and I came back, the bike was gone. And like, it doesn't take a genius to figure out who took it. Obviously, it was the web who had the keys to the building. He's the only one who had direct access to it. And then like, what was I going to do? Tell him, give me back my bike? I did mention it to him before, but he's just like, oh, I don't know. But he just knew because I didn't have what they'd say in Egypt, sened au dahr. He could get away with it. So yeah, that was something that was weird. Another thing that I found very odd was like, I'd get like people like husbands of girls that I knew, and they like text me and they'd be like basically wanting to meet up for a coffee, whatever that meant, and all this stuff. And I'm like, what the hell? Huh? What's going on? Basically, if you're divorced in Egypt, a lot of people think you're easy. Means like, oh, you're desperate for any male attention and you'll just go out with anyone. And they're so silly, because if they understand divorced women, the last thing they'd want is another relationship with a man. It's just like not on your radar at all, because you couldn't be bothered with like all of the stupid drama that men create in women's lives. So in the previous video, I did mention that I had eating disorders as a teen. As a result, I've kind of had disordered eating all throughout my life, but it's never really caused me health issues, if you know what I mean. But during that year, because I was so stressed, I just reverted back to my anorexia days, and I lost so much weight. I think I lost like 2 stone. And for context, I'm probably 60 something kilograms now, and I just given birth, so I'm usually a tiny bit less. So for someone with like kind of on the normal range BMI to lose 2 stone, it's actually quite a lot. I don't know if I have pictures, but if I do, I'll pop them up somewhere. So I was struggling with unemployment, anorexia, financial issues, and just depression, because I just felt totally isolated, totally alone. Nobody really talks about divorce in Egypt. The only person I felt that talked about divorce on social media was this blogger called Fairuz Aid, and she was the only one who was completely honest about it. And I found that so refreshing, which is why I'm doing this video as well, because nobody just talks about it. It's just like, oh, she's divorced, oh, maskina ghalbana, her life is over kind of vibe. And I just feel that has to change, because it's not the end of the world. So how I got myself out of all of these issues was, the first thing I did was I got a job. As I mentioned, I tried teaching. It wasn't for me. So then I found a good embryology job. So I took that. So the moment you get a job, especially as a single mother, everything just feels a bit lighter, because you don't have that pressing issue of bills and money and all that stuff. It was very tough for the girls as well, because they were used to like, you know, a lifestyle of opulence. I would buy them everything. If they want this, I'd be like, yeah, sure, go for it. I'd take them out and so on. And then for me to be like, oh, sorry, I can't afford that now. Oh, sorry, I can't do that now. It's very sad. I used to get really depressed about that, but like I just couldn't maintain the same lifestyle that they used to have before I'd gotten divorced. And I think that was a bit of a shock to them. But because of that, because my bad choices with money affected me so much, I really tried to instill like good financial wisdom into them quite young, because I really didn't want them to struggle with money the way I did. And I think one of the things I realized out of all of this, I wish someone had told me how to properly invest and manage my finances when I was making good money in my 20s, because I blew it all on stupid things. Then after that, I decided I was going to build a life that I liked. I was always like somebody's daughter, wife, mother, so I've always felt like I had to put everyone's needs before mine in a way. So I was like, I'm going to build a life that I like. I don't have to do anything I don't want to do anymore. I don't have to go meet boring people I don't want to meet anymore. I don't have to go to places I don't want to be anymore. I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. So from now on, I'm just going to do stuff that makes me feel good. So I started rediscovering who I was in a sense, and I realized like I loved going to art galleries, I like going to culture festivals, I like going to certain events. So I spent a lot of time doing the things that I like to do. I founded a knitting club, and I met a lovely group of girls, and we all started knitting together and just all that kind of stuff. So I think just if you find yourself at a crossroads and you feel your life is completely falling apart, just strip down everything to its basics. Find out who you are, what you like to do, and then surround yourself with people who like to do similar things. Surround yourself with people who have a very similar mindset to you. That made a huge difference. So I've always felt like I don't belong, I don't fit in. It wasn't because of me, it was just because I was with the wrong people. I wasn't with people who understood me, so they just think I was odd or weird or crazy, but I wasn't. It's just because we were on totally different frequencies. So I surrounded myself with people who, you know, like the same books, like the same ideas, sort of thing. And it really made a difference, because for the first time I was making friends that I wanted to hang out with. I was having like interesting conversations. I wasn't just bored when I went out and like counting down the hours when I could go home. I actually enjoyed going out and meeting people. So it really changed who I was. Also, I would say what helped me is I'm a very action orientated person. So if I was like, I'm unemployed, I'm going to get a job, I can't do this, I will find a way to do it. For me, action keeps me happy and motivated. So if you find yourself in a position where you don't like something about your life, do something about it. Just try. It might work, might not work, but you'll always learn something even if you fail. So I'd be like, put yourself out there, do what you got to do, keep on trying, always have an action plan. It just keeps you focused. The days where I was like super depressed and like I couldn't get out of bed is because I had nothing going on for me. I had no action plan. I had nothing to look forward to. So it just made me feel more depressed. But then I was like, no, I can't just live the rest of my life like one of Charlie in the Chocolate Factory's grandparents, sitting in bed moping all day. So I did form action plans, and it could be anything. Some days my action plan was like, go to meet someone to design a logo for Sincero at the time, go to see someone else to create a box for my beauty product, go to Ataba and see what kind of new bottles that they have for my beauty product. You know, just anything, but always do something. Inactivity breeds unhappiness and despair. The more you do stuff, and the more you're getting outside of your comfort zone, that's when real change happens. I would also recommend therapy, and like proper therapy, not just someone who like listens to you and is like, oh, that's too bad, oh, how are you feeling, sad, oh, that's too bad. Real therapy. One book that really changed my life, especially when it comes to like relationships and how I interact and everything like that, was Attached. So I'll put the picture of this book here. But understanding why you act the way you do in relationships, that really helped me, because I was like, if I ever get into another relationship, I don't want to repeat the same mistakes, and I want to know who I am. So when I choose someone, I will choose someone who complements who I am, not someone who stifles it. Someone who lets me grow, not someone who puts me down. And then I began to change my mindset. So in the beginning, I was like, oh, I'm a failure. I have a failed marriage. I'm not working. I'm probably a burden to everyone. Nobody likes me. You know, all that negative self-talk. I was very good at that, sadly. So I just started to kind of shift the way my internal monologue went. So the approach I had was fake it till you make it. And I started saying, oh my God, you're an amazing person, blah. I didn't really believe it in the beginning, to be honest. And then I was like, do you know what? I am an amazing person. A lot of people would have struggled more than me if they were put in similar situations. But no, I managed to get myself out. I'm there for my kids. They actually have a very they actually have a very good recollection of that period in time. They were very happy, so at least like they weren't depressed with me. I managed to have a positive outlook on life, even though it was a tough time. So I just completely changed my mindset. And another thing I learned from this experience was how to speak up for myself, how to self-advocate. And this did not happen overnight, because if anyone knew me, especially back in the past, I was so bad with confrontation. Once someone brought me a burger and it was missing a bun and I didn't even say anything. I just ate it because I was so scared of confrontation. And that's why I think I used to get taken advantage of a lot. But then I was like, you know what? I don't have to put up with this anymore. So I started to kind of like advocate for myself and put people on the spot. So like if someone, when I'd mentioned people would send me messages like that, people who were married to my friends would send me messages that made me feel uncomfortable. Back then, I just ignored them and blocked them. And then I was like, do you know what? They're making me feel uncomfortable. They're the ones who should be feeling uncomfortable. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just existing. So I'd be like, oh, would your wife be happy if I send a screenshot of this conversation to her? Why are you doing this? I just make them feel bad because they were the ones acting bad, not me. I'm not a bad person for being divorced. They're bad for like, pursuing someone who was friends with their wife. Like, what the hell? And I'd always speak up for myself. People were trying to get advantage of me with prices and apartments and all that stuff. I'd actually put them on the spot. I'd be like, no, why are you doing this? It's because I'm a single woman. Just make them feel uncomfortable, because why should I feel uncomfortable for something that's happened to me? I've done nothing wrong. You should feel uncomfortable for making someone who in this society is in a vulnerable position feel bad. Like, do you get what I mean? So I just started speaking up for myself more, and I feel it's made me a much stronger and a more resilient person. But that's just kind of a quick outline of what I've done to help myself get out of the situation I was in. I'm not sure if this video is everyone's cup of tea, but let me know if you found it helpful, or you can share it with someone who can find it helpful. And please like and subscribe, because I'm still a small YouTuber. Bye.